Yeah. Thirteen, 14. $16. Mr. President, we've got 16. Do you want to wait?
Roll call.
Legislative Day 9, February 22nd, 2024. Senate roll call. Anderson? Baldwin? Barlow? Beitman? Boner? Bouchard? Brennan? Case? Cooper? Dockstetter? Ellis? French? Murphy? Guru? Hicks? Hutchings? Ide? Jones? Kinski? Kolb? Landon? Larson? McEwen? Nethercott? Pappas? Rothfuss? Salazar? Schuler? Salazar present. French present. Larson? McEwen? Bouchard? Ide? Beitman? Kinski? Dockstetter? Scott? Steinmetz? Would you like to excuse
Here.
the rest, Mr. President? I'm missing Beitman.
We'll excuse him for now.
Okay, Beitman excused, Dockstetter excused, Kinski excused, Landon excused. Mr. President?
Here.
Present.
Prayer of the
20
day by, okay, excuse me.
Sorry, 26 present, 5 excused.
Prayer of the day by Reverend Gilbert.
Well, you look as though you could stand a prayer on hope, which is the garland worn by our fourth sister. Let us pray. Everlasting God, where there is no hope, there is despair. So we pray that you will sustain us as a people of hope, so others may live with an abiding hope. May hope infuse us with the strength for today and a purposeful anticipation of all our tomorrows. We humbly and earnestly ask for your wisdom so that we do not build our hope on foundations destined to crumble. We sincerely pray for wisdom to focus on the realities that endure, that enrich, and that embrace the wholeness of your purposeful creation for today and forever. St. Paul wrote, "Whoever plows should plow in the hope of a share in the harvest." Gracious God, enable us to sow hope so we may reap hope and others reap a harvest of hope. May our hope be a glowing garland worn, as worn by our fourth sister, and shared with others as a worthy garland for all to wear. May the thoughts of our minds, the words of our mouths, the work of our hands embed authentic hope for all within Wyoming and beyond. It is your enlightening and empowering presence that we pray. Amen.
Senator Nethercott, lead us in pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
Reading, correction, and approval of journal.
Mr. President, your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of February 21, 2024 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Senator Larson, Chairman.
Any objections? Being none, the report is adopted. Doctor for the day, John Winter, MD, orthopedic surgery, Cheyenne. Fall down the stairs, he'll fix you. Nurse for the day, no nurse for the day. Today in history, in 1980, the U.S. hockey team beat the Soviets in the Miracle on Ice. That was actually an incredible piece of history. Quote for the day, before you criticize someone, you should walk a mile in their shoes. That way, when you criticize them, you're a mile away from them and you have their shoes. Jack Handy. I'll skip the last one. We'll talk about that later. Reports, messages from the House.
From the House of Representatives, Mr. President, the first three House bills passed on an amended form. Message number 117, February 21, 2024. House Bill 24, Certificate of Need Appeal. Passed the House in amended form, ayes 58, noes 4. Message number 123, February 21, 2024. House Bill number 66, Firefighter Cancer Screening Benefits, passed the House in amended form, ayes 62. Message number 126, February 21, 2024. House Bill number 81, Public Officer Training Amendments, passed the House in amended form, ayes 59, noes 3. Message number 116, February 21, 2024. Mr. President, House Bill number 23, Vehicle Registration, E-Certificate, and Grace Period, passed the House, ayes 62. Message 118, February 21, 2024. Mr. President, House Bill number 25, Medicaid Third-Party Payer Conditions, passed the House, ayes 61, noes 1. Message number 119, February 21, 2024. House Bill number 33, Mining Operations Blasting Requirements, passed the House, ayes 49, noes 13. Message number 120, February 21, 2024. Mr. President, House Bill number 35, Limitation on Environmental Rulemaking, passed the House, ayes 58, noes 4. Message number 121, February 21, 2024. Mr. President, House Bill number 46, Chancery Court Timeline for Resolution of Disputes, passed the House, ayes 52, noes 10. February 21, 2024, message number 122. Mr. President, House Bill number 54, Wyoming Reads Day, passed the House, ayes 52, noes 10. Message number 124, February 21, 2024. Mr. President, House Bill number 72, Workers' Compensation Provision for Adverse Deviation, passed the House, ayes 62. Message number 125, February 21, 2024. Mr. President, House Bill number 73, Abandoned Mine Reclamation Accounts, passed the House, ayes 52, noes 10. Signed, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk.
Thank you. Reports from standing committees.
February 21, 2024, Mr. President, your committee number 3, Revenue, to whom was referred Senate File 68, Tangible Personal Property Tax Exemption, respectfully reports back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Beitman, French, Ide, McEwen, no, Senator Pappas. Senator Beitman, Chairman. February 21, 2024, Mr. President, Committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom was referred Senate File 107, E-Cigarette and Vapor Material Directory, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Guru, Kinski, and Nethercott. No, Senator Salazar. Senator Kinski, Chairman. February 21, 2024, Mr. President, Committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom was referred Senate File 86, School Safety and Security Funding, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Guru, Kinski, and Salazar. Excused, Senator Nethercott. Senator Kinski, Chairman. February 21, 2024, Mr. President, to Committee Number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom is referred Senate File 52, Wyoming Stable Token Act Amendments. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Cooper, Dockstader, Ellis, Jones, and Rothfuss. Senator Dockstader, Chairman. February 21, 2024, Mr. President, to Committee Number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom is referred Senate File 51, Unlawful Dissemination of Misleading Synthetic Media. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Cooper, Dockstader, Ellis, Jones, and Rothfuss. Senator Dockstader, Chairman. February 22, 2024, Mr. President, Committee Number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom was referred House Bill 16, Sutton State Archaeological Site Legal Description. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Grew, Jones, and Schuler. Excused, Senator Ellis. Senator Schuler, Chairman. February 22, 2024, Mr. President, Committee Number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom was referred House Bill 40, School District Trustee Oath of Office. Respectfully reports back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Barlow, Boner, Case, and Landon. Excused, Senator Scott. Senator Case, Chairman. February 22, 2024, Mr. President, Committee Number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred House Bill 10, Grace Period State Land Lease Renewals. Respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators French, Ide, Kolb, Larson, and Steinmetz. Excused, Senator Hicks. Senator Steinmetz, Chairman. February 22, 2024, Mr. President, Committee Number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred House Bill 11 engrossed, State Land Lease Amendments. Respectfully reports same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators French, Ide, Kolb, Larson, and Steinmetz. Excused, Senator Hicks. Senator Steinmetz, Chairman.
Thank you, Randy. We're about to go into third read. Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I tried this last night. We'll try it again. After discussing this matter with the chairman of the Labor Committee, we're going to ask that House Bill 66, Firefighter Cancer Screening Benefits, be referred to from Committee Number 8, Transportation, to Committee Number 10, Labor.
Without objection, so ordered. Okay, so we're about to go into the third reading budget amendments again. I encourage you all to pick up your green sheet and look at the back of it. That's the general file bills, and legally, without extending, that's what we've got left hanging out there. I'm not going to shove hard, but let's keep our debates really as compact as you can, so we're not out here at midnight again, because we're really down to a tight time frame. So make your comments as concise as you can, and let's try to be as business-like and quick as we can, getting run through here. Anything to add, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, to that? Okay, with that, we're going straight into it. It's 11 o'clock now, so let's see if we can run through a number of these. Third reading budget amendment number 63 to Senate File 1. We have it read in, please.
Senate File 1, third reading amendment number 63, section 300, page 103, after line 14, insert.
Senator Schuler.
Without objection, I would like to withdraw Senate File 62.
Without objection, third reading amendment number 63, Senate File 1 has been withdrawn. We're on to third reading amendment number 64 to Senate File 1. Clerk will read the amendment in, please.
Senate File 1, third reading amendment number 64, section 308, major funding for state facilities, state parks and cultural resources, university and community colleges, page 43, line 1, after.
Senator Kinski.
Mr. Chairman, I would move third reading amendment 64 to Senate File 1. Ask the body's favorable approval. This amendment simply, the current budget is talking about the Oil and Gas Commission doing major maintenance. And what we're trying to do here is to move all that language over to the major maintenance section and out of the oil and gas section, so that the major maintenance is being conducted by the State Construction Department, not the Oil and Gas Commission. Ask the body's favorable consideration.
Question being called, this is voice vote. We're voting on third reading amendment number 64 to Senate File 1. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, no. Third reading amendment number 1 to Third reading amendment number 64 to Senate File 1 is passed to Senate. Third reading amendment number 34 to Senate File 1. Reading clerk will read it in.
Senate File 1, third reading amendment number 34, section 313, page 128, line 23, delete.
Thank you. They're out of line because we've got an alignment on those, so on some of your sheets, you may show out of line. Senator Landon. I'm sorry about that. That's
Which one?
34, school capital construction. Just one down.
Mr. President, my apologies, just trying to get unscrambled here. I would move, Mr. President, third reading amendment number 34 to Senate File 1. Folks, this goes into that school capital construction budget area. Unfortunately, during the drafting of things coming into the legislative session, this was left out. It's an amendment that was pulled in, or at least considered on the other side, whether, not sure where it landed, but I think on second reading. It didn't get over here, Mr. President, and so I'm bringing it on third. This is the money that it will take to pay the leases on the 2 charter schools here in Laramie County and the charter school up in Natrona County. We've set those charter schools on the ground and we have to pay the lease. So that's what that is. I'd be glad to try to answer any questions.
We're voting on third reading amendment number 34 to Senate File 1. Chief clerk will call the roll.
Third reading amendment number 34, Anderson. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Barlow. Aye. Beitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Brennan. Aye. Case. No. Cooper. Aye. Dockstetter. Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Furphy. Aye. Garou. Aye. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. Aye. Ide. Aye. Jones. Aye. Kinski. Aye. Kolb. Aye. Landon.
Aye.
Aye. Larson. Aye. McEwen. Aye. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Rothfuss. Aye. Salazar. Aye. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. President Driscoll.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Third reading amendment number 34. 30 aye, 1 no.
By your vote, third reading amendment number 34 to Senate File 1 is passed to Senate. Third reading amendment number 35 to Senate File 1. Reading clerk will read in the amendment, please.
Senate File 1, third reading amendment number 35, section 313, page 129, line 7, after.
Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, I move third reading number 35 to Senate File number 1 and ask for your favorable considerations. Members of the Senate, you should have a handout on your desk that looks like this. It's got a number of pages to it, and it's got the green highlights. So I'm going to be working off of this as we look through this. So, Mr. President, the effect of this amendment is that it goes into the school capital construction and it removes a number of projects. And the reason and the rationale for removing those projects, Mr. President, you can find those if you go to the page 3 of 13 on here. It's probably buried. This was handed out yesterday. But this is what the School Facilities Commission presents to the Select Committee on School Facilities. Mr. President, I'll let folks see if they can find that.
Yeah, I'd like to get one if I could. I hate to ask staff, but someone dig one off my desk for me. Thank you. Senator Ellis, thank you very much. Is everybody ready? Senator Hicks, proceed.
So, Mr. President, the effect of this amendment does is it goes in and pulls out those projects that if you look on there and you go to page 3 of 13, which is the second page in there, these are the projects that are currently in the budget that have construction dollars for these projects, Mr. President. And so what the amendment does is it just pulls out those construction projects. All the other component level projects, the leases, the major maintenance, everything else still stays in there. And so, Mr. President, the reason that I've gone in there and are pulling those out is because I'm really concerned that we need to have a high degree of fidelity to the process and how we go about funding these projects. And so, Mr. President, the typical arrangement that we have that's in statutes and in rules is first the School Facility Commission does all the capacity, and they also look at the condition and rating index. And then they come back through the School Facilities Commission and they say, okay, these are your ratings. And then what we do in the legislature, we provide authorization for funding for Mercer study. And so then the School Facilities and the State Building Commission, they go out and do the Mercer studies. Once the Mercer study comes back, then we appropriate the money for those based on that recommendation that comes out of the school facilities. The operable word here, Mr. President, is after the Mercer study has been completed. And the reason that's important is you don't want to put the cart in front of the horse. Because the Mercer study is supposed to come up with the most reasonable, cost-effective remedy. Most reasonable, cost-effective remedy. But when we in the budget say, well, we don't have a Mercer study, so I'd bring your attention to, so if you go to page 3, line 13, and you go over to the right-hand column, and I'm not going to call out the name of the school districts or the buildings or any particular, but if you look at line 1, it says Mercer contract is underway as part of a district-wide study of elementary schools. So we haven't completed a Mercer study yet. It's underway, but yet we're funding the school for construction. Line 2, Mercer study will be conducted and presented to the School Facilities Commission in 2024. FCC design funding from the 2020 general session appropriated for construction requested in this budget. So they're using money that we've already previously appropriated to go out and do the Mercer study. And it's the same with all of these. The Mercer studies are not complete. They're somewhere in the process. The contract may have been let, or we're looking at deriving those. So, Mr. President, I think given the operation of the statutes and what the commission rules do, we clearly need to find the statutory and rule structure and have a high fidelity we need to have a high fidelity of the way we operate in the legislature to follow our own statutes and to follow those rules by those agencies. So, Mr. Chairman, on and for the amendment.
Thank you. Further discussion? Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Very briefly, on and against the amendment. These recommendations that are in the budget right now that are being removed were the recommendations from the School Facilities Committee through the interim work based on all the testimony received. So this is what the process has arrived at, working through the process. Support that process, support the School Facilities Committee recommendation on and against the amendment.
Senator Rothfuss.
President Driscoll.
Thank you. Not to belabor it a whole lot, but I think the process is the process, and it's not the committee, the Mercer. It's really clear that we've got to come to a process. I am very hard in favor of this amendment as it stands, so we really start doing our long-term planning and do it in a correct way. And until you have a Mercer study in your hand, you may not know exactly what the right path is. We're actually, the good senator from Baggs put it really well as we're putting the cart ahead of the wagon, is we really should know exactly what all the alternatives are in these schools. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. And we're talking about maybe a school that needs built and one that can be repaired or one that can be changed. And the Mercer really is a key component for us if we're going to have this high-end fidelity to go forward with the schools. And I don't think we're in any huge disaster. This is absolutely a great way, and we need to absolutely, when you consider what's out there on the horizon for us, make sure that we do an absolute, verifiable, correct process going forward, or we're going to be back and forth again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Further discussion? Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and against the amendment. Senators, I just draw your attention to the fact that this really is only, we're talking, the sheet we were handed out or received in our inboxes talks about capacity. And, you know, we weren't going to name particular school districts, but when I look at the hashtags on mine, what it was handed out, it's Laramie 1. And so, Mr. Chairman, we've talked about these schools for a number of years, and this is only part of the picture. We know some of the particular elementary schools on this list are old and deteriorating. And to put a finer point on that, you know, for those of us who have taken the time to tour some of these schools, one of them that's high on the list right now has backed up sewage in it. Let me just say that again, sewage, like, that's what our kids are learning in. Major capacity issues. And, you know, I agree with efforts to revise how we fund schools, I really do. But in my experience, pre-Campbell years, local communities used to look at their community needs 10 to 20 years out. And that's what we've got to start doing in this chamber, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. President, is really have a very big forward vision when it comes to funding these schools. So is it appropriate, we talked a lot about the fidelity of the process. How many times have we heard that in the last couple of days? A lot. This is the process. This is what we got from the process. This is what's before us. And so I'd ask and urge you, senators, please, this isn't the time. And I'll say that again. This is not the time to be supporting amendments like this. Please vote no on this amendment.
Senator Drew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. President. I'm sorry I couldn't find this sheet, so I just went to the bell. Silly me. And I too look at this, and I am concerned, and I know we're in a hurry. I know we're supposed to go fast. I know we all want to get out of here. So I'll make it quick as well. It seems that we are, in an effort to follow the process as presented by one member, that we're going to violate the process that was done by a committee, a commission, another committee, a combined committee, and now we're in third reading, and now we're going to change it again. And I'll just won't talk about some of the other counties here that have been already spoken of, so I won't belabor those, but I'll talk about mine and what I know, and what my community did. My community had a problem. My community tried to come up with an outside-the-box solution. The county that I live in is one of the most heavily taxed recapture districts in the state today. We voted as one community to tax ourselves yet again to facilitate a change in our high school, to reach into our own pockets and spend our own money, to move our sports facilities out of our current high school, which is a good high school, good bones, good solid high school. We move those sports facilities, gym, wrestling rooms, mats, the weight rooms, all that stuff moved out to what we call the Bronc Achievement Center, voted for it, and are building it now. What will be left is a shell, part of our former high school, of the sports areas of our high school, which could then be repurposed for lunchrooms, classrooms, AV rooms, extend the life of our high school from what our school board said was up to 20 years in a very cost-effective way. We came to the committee, and the committee voted for it. The commission had a different view, but we've been working with them, and in the meeting that's going to be held next month, we plan to go through this process. We're not asking for the first money. We are already providing it. What we're asking for is to help us. We've already helped ourselves, but to help us finish the job. Is it outside the box? Yes. Is it outside the process? Yes. Is it a good solution for the state of Wyoming? Yes. And now we're going to be, by this amendment, cut out. On and against the amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Follow up to that. Gentleman preceding me said a lot of that, but we've got a very unique situation over there. And I haven't seen this happen throughout the other 47 districts in the state, where they just put together nearly half of the money needed to build this project. 46% stepped up and said, okay, we'll help with that. I haven't seen any other districts do that, 46%. I got a school, if we have a school project, if I have a school project, I'm coming to the state and saying Mercer study got everything in line and asking for that money without any help, but the project my good colleague just referenced is almost halfway there, already paid for. Mercer done, everything in place. So what do we say to the school district? Go keep your money. We're not going to help. You've been creative. You found a way to get this project done. No proper names, but the center he just referenced. You're halfway there, but we're not going to help you over the finish line. So much for you being creative on and against this amendment.
Senator Landon, then Senator Cole.
Mr. President, thank you. On and against the amendment. For one thing, I'm not sure which of these projects we've found that don't have a Mercer study. I believe that one of those that was pointed to from the bringer of the amendment was a project, a transportation facility, which we don't do a Mercer study on that. We know that in that small school district over there, we need a new transportation building. Folks, I know we've got to get out of here, but you need to understand that this past year we had some challenges in our state construction area. We brought in a new assessment team. Those buildings out across the state had not been assessed for 6 years, actually beyond the time that we promised ourselves we'd go in there. They had not been assessed in 6 years, and a new assessment team created a brand new list of schools. So what we did on the school facilities committee, the meeting that the bringer of the amendment was unable to be there, but what we did was to ask for a combination of those two lists, because we had a list from 2016, we had a brand new list from 2023. We know that those are genuine lists of concerns out across the state. So what the state construction department did at our direction was to come back with this combined list. There isn't a project on here, folks, that doesn't need our attention. Let me take you to page 130 in your budget. This calls for the removal of component projects. They don't need Mercer studies. This is vetted by a statewide group of education professionals. It goes through the School Facilities Commission, then it comes to your select committee, and then it comes to us. These are projects in these schools that we know we need to accomplish. This is a list that's usually 50 long, and we are able to fund maybe 10, 12, 15 of these. Those are the roofing, HVAC types of things that districts cannot afford on their own. So that's one problem with the amendment, is the fact that it doesn't discern between a major construction project regarding a Mercer study, whatever, but it also takes out the component funding here. If it's all about just not wanting to spend the money, then we should tell each other that. The process is good. On and against the amendment.
Senator Cole, then Senator Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. It was mentioned about the school in Northwest, that they weren't number one on the list, the state list, and I'd like to know what number ranking they were given on that list. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Scott.
Mr. President, on the situation up in the Teton County School District, the argument I'm hearing is that, gee, we've been able to do a good part of the project already with local funds, so therefore we deserve to have help with everything else. And Mr. President, that illustrates one of the problems with the current system. They can afford to do a good part of it because they have a tremendous assessed valuation. Most counties couldn't afford to do that. The one thing the Supreme Court has been very clear in, when you read the Campbell decisions, is that we've got to get away from funding things based on local wealth. That we can't discriminate based on that, and that's exactly what we're being asked to do here. So it's an irrationality in some ways of the current decision. It's removing the local degree of responsibility, but that's what we're up against. So, Mr. President, on and for the amendment that will cure that particular problem.
Senator Kinski.
Mr. President, it was stated that component funding is removed by this amendment. It is not. Everything needed for the schools between now and next session is there. What this does is takes out construction of specific schools until the process is completed with fidelity. Now, our process, where we fall down, I think, is at the end, where the list that gets generated gets jiggered and somebody gets moved ahead of somebody else, and that places us in legal jeopardy. And so without talking about being sued, we are being sued because the process is not being followed with fidelity. So this isn't saying don't build schools. This isn't saying there's a sympathetic case to be made for these schools. In fact, for all schools, especially those lower down on the list. It's saying we have got to complete the process with fidelity. And that doesn't mean that when we get recommendations from the state construction department that we start moving people up and down the list. That's where we lose the fidelity. We've got a process that has to be followed. There have been some Mercer studies. The Mercer study that needs to be done, the statewide, as well as a complete assessment of all these schools and a ranking for condition and capacity, as well as the suitability issue, has to be done. It will be done by this time next year. We'll be back here. Let's make sure that we don't err and commit $100 million to construction of schools just to find out we got to come up with another $200 million to build the schools that actually should have been built in priority according to the Supreme Court edict and our own statutes and our own regulation. On and for the amendment, folks, we're going to build schools. We're going to continue to build schools. Just we have to hit the pause button just for 10 months to allow the state construction division to finish the work. We've been advised, I've been advised by our staff that there's work that needs to be done. The process has not yet been completed with fidelity. Thank you.
Senator Ellis for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. President. Great discussion on this amendment this morning. But are you guys hearing what I'm hearing? The process has been followed. The process hasn't been followed. No, the process has been followed. No, it hasn't. How subjective is this? I think what alarms me the most is a carve-out. All these projects, they can wait, but not one in particular, lines 19 through 22. Process. We're picking winners and losers here. Another buzzword we like to say, another buzz phrase. I'd ask that we divide this amendment, lines 1 through 18, 23 through 29 are Division 1. Division 2 is lines 19 through 22. And then lines 30 through 33, and on page 2, the remainder of the amendment go with both.
Could you do that one more time? I didn't catch up.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, neither did staff.
Absolutely. Lines 1 through 18 would be Division 1. Lines 23 through 29 would also be Division 1.
1 through 18,
1 through 18,
yep.
and then 23 through 29.
Okay,
Division 2 would be 19 through 22.
okay.
And then the remainder of the lines on page 1, 30 through 33, and the remaining language on page 2, that would go with both divisions.
Is divisible. Which division would you like to speak on first?
Thank you, Mr. President. On Division 1, fool me once, shame on you, or me, fool me twice, shame on, or I'm getting that all backwards. Let me start again. Let me just say this. As someone who is in a district that's growing, I see the capacity needs in my community, and it seems anytime that a project comes up here that affects Laramie One, it is always, always on the chopping block. And I'm happy to put my best foot forward to try and defend those schools being built. So when I hear, oh, we'll fund it, senators, that's not my experience at all. How do we plan our communities? How do we plan for long-term growth in a community when we don't know how we're going to address these issues? So pardon me, but when I heard and promised that, oh, we'll look at these, we'll still be in the business of building schools. I don't know about that, Mr. President. Our track record would suggest to me otherwise. So I'd ask you to defer or defeat division number 1 on this amendment.
Senator Rothfuss, if you come give me a hand.
Senator Drew?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I urge adoption, a nay vote on Division 1. We'll go back and talk about it to answer the questions that were asked before. We did do a Mercer study in 2019. We voted to raise our sales tax, not our property tax, our sales tax, and for $16 million to pay for half the project. And I understand the argument from the good senator from Bates Creek. But I guess what I would say is this has nothing to do with wealth. We didn't ask people to contribute based on their net worth. Young, old, seniors, working families, rich, poor, cross-section of the voters of Teton County voted. The same people that voted for us, voted for me anyway, to tax themselves, to help make their school better. We did all the studies we do, and we looked in our community. Our community, from another subject that we talked about last night, has historic growth, building affordable housing units, building housing for our workers. Those workers have families. The families want to have schools. We have real issues with trying to keep our teachers. The one thing our school district's trying to do is grapple with the one thing they can try to keep a hold of, and that's the buildings that we have. Mr. Chairman, so many things in our community are out of our control. So many things in our community are just past us. So we're trying to do the best we can, and all we're doing is all we're asking is for some help along the way. And frankly, I find it stunning that when we do that and we come down to our own citizen legislature and ask for a helping hand, the Wyoming way, we get you on the door. Vote yes on the amendment or division number 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Drew. Mr. President?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to kick back just a tiny bit on it. I really do think it's time to take a 1-year break on this. This amendment's good. And let's really evaluate the process. And I'm going to give you an example, and I don't want to make people angry, but we heard there's no new schools get built down here. Right here in town, when I come to work, I drive by a brand new big junior high. I drive by another one going up to a friend's house to have a beverage once in a while. There's quite a few new ones here, and they're growing incredibly down here. And there's a need down here, without a doubt. But we've been gamed, folks. This district down here, and I'm not going to name it, has divided themselves into regions. And what they've done is part of the regions are grossly overpopulated, and you'll look at the capacity issue, and that's those top ones on the list. But go down the list and read through it, and when you total them all, that's what I was sitting up there madly scribbling on my paper. You're going to find they have excess capacity right here in this town right now. They won't have in a few years, but right now they've got to do something that's really wild that happens in our rural communities. You actually have to load kids up, put them on a bus, and move them somewhere to put them in a school that has capacity. And we're looking at schools that drop down. They've got a lot of capacity left. But just because they're not 3 blocks from a house, we're not willing to make a kid go somewhere else or take a choice. And that means other schools around the state don't get built that actually have capacity issues that don't have another school to bus them to. And I think we've really got to take a hard look at this process. What we've done has led to lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. And we've actually got to get to the point that the process is good. When you look at the people that stand up and talk on this, guess what you're looking at? People that have schools on the list at the top. It's interesting. We fight for what we really need at home, and we all do that. That's what we come. Our constituents expect it. But as a body, we're here to do what's right for the entire state in aggregate. So we need to look at some of these issues and make some hard decisions that says maybe you should move around, and maybe we should be looking at creative solutions rather than just building new schools always. And I think that's something we haven't done. And so when you look at studies, and it's kind of fun, we got to figure out what we're going to do. If you look at the list from 4 years ago compared to our new consultants, it just tipped upside down and we reshuffled it because different consultants look at things differently. We've got to come up with consistency in what we do. I'm looking at colleagues beside me, I'm looking at you up there. You guys have given your hearts to do the very best you can. But that doesn't always mean that the end result is where we ought to be. And we really have to have something that's defensible to the courts. Because at this point, it's not just legislation, folks. It's what the people in the black robes say. And if we don't have consistency, which I don't believe you need to support this amendment intact, if we don't have consistency, you can expect to spend more state money defending ourselves against a process that's not working. I urge you to defeat the splits on it and leave the bill as stands.
Thank you, President Driscoll. Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want a little more clarification because something was said that caused some confusion on the money that we're raising in my district back in the west. I appreciate the good senator from Bates Creek addressing that, but that was actually incorrect. Let me clarify this. In my district, we're using the option 1 cent sales tax. We're not using the assessed value on the property. We're using the option 1 cent sales tax to come nearly half, reaching nearly half of what we need to build this addition. Mercer study's already been done, and guess what? We're gonna go back and do it again in March because the students just keep rolling in out there to the west. They keep crowding in. It's a crowded place. We're trying to find a solution. We brought the money to the table, and we're asking the state to help us over the finish line on and for this part of the amendment, this part of the divided amendment.
Further discussion. Senator Poppins.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just want to push back on your statements just a little bit because when you mentioned the school that you drive by every day, I want you to know, ladies and gentlemen of the body, that project was put on the street for design in 2005. That's how long we've decided we were going to build that school. It didn't get authorized for construction for another 12 years. And then when it did go out, you all remember, those of you who were in the body, we had it designed 95% design. I know because I was the designer. And this body pulled the funding for it for a full year. Why? Political reasons, I can tell you. Certainly not any other reason, because it was designed 95%. And I can tell you, at that time, that full year, because we started to design a year later, after body finally authorized money again, we were looking at $88,000 a month inflation for that entire year. And not only that, we put it out so late that we had construction through 2 winter seasons. That increased the cost by $750,000 for winter protection. I mean, when you start a project in October and December, it costs you a lot of money. I want to push back that we don't necessarily do the right things here. We need to rely on the commission and on the select committee to make those decisions. A lot of these projects, including the one in Teton County, we came to you 2 years ago. The commission, or the select committee, brought that in the bill, of course. It was defeated. The recommendation was not taken. I think it was 120 million for all the schools that were on there. The body decided to strip out any mention of any school, and we ended up giving 100 or 95 million or 100 million to the select committee to use to determine which school to be built. Frankly, none of that has happened. They're still waiting for it. After 2 years, after the select committee decided that that was a priority. Now we're back here 2 years later, and we're going to tell them again, it's not a priority, even though the select committee says it is.
I think we're actually defeating our process here.
We have a process. And whether a Mercer study is done or not done, it's not going to go forward if the Mercer study is not done anyhow. It's going to have to be accomplished. There's no reason why we can't appropriate these monies while the Mercer studies are under the way, on and for this division. Thank you.
Senator Ellis?
I'm not speaking for my third time. I'm not speaking the merits
No,
of this.
we're good with you.
But I had LSO checked my homework, and I would like to just clarify my division. Division 1 would be 1 through 18, and then lines 23 through 33, on to page 2, lines 1 through 4. So it would include a little bit more.
Very good.
And then on the bottom of page 2, the adjustments, lines 5 and 6, that would go with both 1 and 2.
I think that's the way we announced it. I might be wrong.
Oh, thanks, sorry.
You're great, thank you, not a problem. Further discussion? Further discussion? Senator Rothfuss, then Senator Hicks, and then Senator Barlow. The order I saw.
Thank you, Mr. President, and my apologies for doing this, but I actually would like to divide out a little bit further as a Division 3, because it's a very, very different issue that seems to have been rolled into this. Lines 23 through 29. So of this, lines 23 through 29 would become a third division that is entirely unrelated to everything we've talked about. So I'd ask that division.
It's divisible,
Thank you.
stands. Would you like to speak on it?
Not now. We'll come back to it.
Senator Hicks?
Mr. Chairman, that would be for my second time. Well, no, we're on.
No, your
division-
first time
we're
on
Div-
Division 1,
Division
Senator
1.
Hicks.
So, Mr. President, on Division 1, so, it's been portrayed here that the School Facilities Commission presented all this, but that's not facts, folks. So let me tell you what happened with the School Facilities Commission. You can pull up the report. This is their report. I can't find Teton School construction in here. Now, there's a major component part in there for Teton School. Mr. President, School Facilities Commission recommended also that there's a component part for Rock Springs High School. Select Committee didn't adopt those, so they don't follow the School Facilities Commission. Furthermore, we saw the Appropriations Committee just insert in an appropriation for a school that didn't go through school facilities, did not go through the Select Committee on School Facilities. It just showed up in the Appropriations Committee. So, Mr. Chairman, this is what we're talking about. That is not fidelity to the process. So on the issue of Mercer studies, so in the interim of 2016 to the current, the state of Wyoming didn't do a lot as far as follow our own process. So some of the districts went out and hired consultants to do Mercer studies for them, particularly the school districts that were very astute, had the capital to do that. And so what you're hearing now is, well, there's already been a Mercer study done, but it was paid for by the school district to do that. It wasn't funded by the state. And I'll just ask everybody in here, usually when you hire your own contractor, a lot of times you get the answer that you want. So not saying that there's anything wrong with it, but it didn't follow the process of a state-funded Mercer study.
Further discussion? Further discussion? We are on Senator Nethercott. Oh, I called Barlow earlier. Nethercott, and then Landon.
Am I ready? All right.
You're on.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and against the amendment, the issue here is that Division 1, which we're speaking to, guts a lot more projects than the majority floor leader's concern. And so that's not fidelity to the process either. So if you wanted to remove one or two of the schools that may have not demonstrated fidelity to the process, why wasn't that done? Rather, a complete gutting of all pending school capital construction projects, with the exception of one that we have discussed 3 separate times this session. Fidelity to what process, I'm not sure we're alleging. It takes about 7 years from the time of process planning to get a school built. Continuing to delay is not ideal for the students of the school. This quagmire that we are in, and it is what I will describe it as, not having had the benefit of being on school facilities, is truly a quagmire. And there is frustration all around, as you heard me say yesterday. That does not obviate the needs of many of these districts and the students within them. It does not. And so we're going to continue to kick this can down the road until we may be satisfied with the process. I struggle that that will come to fruition in any time soon. And so we have to be mindful of our bigger picture obligations to the students. And I know that that sounds like an easy argument or an easy sell to do it for the children, but that's exactly what we're doing here. It is unequivocal that these schools need either replaced. The good senator from Laramie County is correct. There is a school in Laramie County with sewage in it and rats. You're free to research that story. There's lots of stories about it. That is unacceptable, and we can lay blame all we want. There is capacity on the north side of that district here in Laramie County. That would require busing of those students, probably 40 minutes. I don't know the specifics of that, but I know where the school is that has capacity, and that's very much on the north side. And the students who are affected with the school are on the south side. So no, it would be absolutely impossible for them to walk or ride their bikes, and it would be a good bus route for them. Now, that's something certainly they could do, but that's really not a long-term solution, because that school on the north side will achieve capacity, and the school on the south side does have capacity, and it needs replaced. So I think we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater here, and we're not recognizing the current needs of our students across the state. And there's a lot of criticism, despite the effort not to speak to Laramie 1. But Laramie 1 is only one project in here, and I encourage you to look at the list of the projects that are being removed here. Laramie 1 is only one. So all of your communities face this consequence as well, and I don't think it's the right result. And that doesn't mean I'm satisfied with the process, but I'd urge your defeat of this amendment so we can continue to move forward with providing suitable educational spaces for our children.
On and against Division 1, just a couple of points of interest. Didn't have a chance to talk to the bringer of the amendment, who incidentally is on the School Facilities Committee with me, but as a reminder to both the sponsor of the amendment and to the rest of us, I take you to the bottom of page 131. We toured a facility up in Natrona County, which belongs to us. It's a state facility, which happens to be attached to one of the schools up there. It's a school for the deaf. We don't use it as such anymore, Mr. President. And so the idea of the School Facilities Commission and of the School Facilities Committee was to sell that building. That's what that is at the bottom of that page. And the proceeds would simply go to the School Foundation program. Let me take you back over to page 130. At the top of the page, you will see Teton One High School in the priority list of construction on the following school buildings. Do you see the word legislature right to the left of there? That was action taken by the School Facilities Committee. Happened to be one of the meetings that the bringer of this amendment was unable to be there. But that was a request that we made. And the reason we did is we wanted you to be able to consider this. We had a district that did something historical. They stepped up and funded most of what they needed to do up there in Teton County. We thought that deserved consideration by the legislature. So we are the ones that asked the state building folks to pull this into this bill. The third point I want to make regarding this Division 1 and for Division 2 for that matter, is that yes, we had some struggles in the administration of the School Facilities Division over the course of the last year. Late in the year, however, the former director of school facilities was brought back in and now serves as the interim director. He is the one who helped to shepherd this budget into the session. And folks, I trust his work on and against Division 1.
President, just a little bit of latitude because we keep referring to this other component, which was Division 2. But just for clarification for everybody, what Division 2 does, so it doesn't get tangled up in this argument. What that effectively does is follow the recommendation of the School Facilities Commission. And the School Facilities Commission specifically recommended almost $9 million for Rock Springs High School for a component level project. What the Select Committee decided to do was say, we're just going to go build a high school. So we're going to take that money that was designed for a component project and we're going to put it towards design of a high school. The only thing that amendment does is restore the recommendation of the School Facilities Commission to the Select Committee to provide that $9 million back to Rock Springs High School. That's all Division 2 does. It's not new money, it's the exact same recommendation that we received from the School Facilities Commission. That's all that Division 2 does.
Chair, just want a complete understanding on how we vote on each of these divisions. Thank you.
Thank you. I owe you all an apology. It's no on Division 1, for that was what I was saying, and I said it wrong. But you have to admit, it's a little bit confusing. And I also want to apologize to my good friend from Beggs. I do respect process. But I got to tell you, folks, I understand what he's saying, and I really do. I understand it very well. I understand about how the collective thought, how we need to all think as a collective, and we need to have fidelity. Comrades, vote no on Division 1. Thank you.
One more time. Oh, you got somebody? I'm allowed to speak one more time. One more clarification. Did a clarification before about how we got that funding through the sales tax. Now the valuation. Clarification as well. Our Mercer study was actually done in the proper way. It was done by the state. Getting ready to do another one. So that clarification. And again, a no. There we go. Our Mercer study was done by the state. It was done in the proper way. There was some allegation that perhaps we're doing our own studies. We didn't do that. It was done by the state. And asking for a no on this amendment.
Thank you. Tit for tat. Can you hear me now? Anyone else? Any further debate? Okay. Question being called. We are on Division 1 of Third reading amendment number 35 to Senate File 1, Division 1 is lines 1 through 18 and lines 23, what? That's it, 1 through 18? I don't believe so. 1 through 18 and then lines 30 through the end. Is that correct, Senator Ellis? Okay. Thank you. This is going to have to be a roll call vote. Senator Ellis.
Included in Division 1 is also lines 30 through 33 on page 1, and then lines 1 through 4 on page 2.
Yeah, that's what I was,
Sorry,
yeah,
just,
it's there. Thank you. Senator Hicks, clarification only.
President, just for clarification, if you vote aye, you're voting for this amendment. If you vote no, you're voting this amendment down on
Part
this
of it.
division.
On the division, correct. Roll call. Al, vote. Thank you. It's kind of like a roll call.
Third reading amendment number 35, Division 1. Anderson? No. Baldwin? No. Barlow? No. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? No. Ellis? No. French? Aye. Furphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? No. Kinsky? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? No. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? No. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll? Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. On Division 1, 16 aye, 15 no.
By your vote, Division 1. By your vote, Division 1 to third reading amendment number 35 to Senate File 1 has passed. We are now on Division 2. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, briefly on Division 2, I'd suggest that the body vote no on this particular division. This was the recommendation of the School Facilities Commission based on the assumption that there wasn't going to be a new school built. So the School Facilities Committee decided, well, if we're going to build a new school, you know, putting about $4 million, I don't remember the exact number, into a component was probably a poor investment. So the idea then of the School Facilities Committee was, well, let's put that into the planning of the next high school, which honestly seemed reasonable at the time. That was just rejected by the Senate. But give some thought to whether or not you want to put a component into a building that we are intending to eliminate. But I'll just leave it with voted up or voted down, Mr. President. Thank you.
Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to emphasize what the good senator just said. Again, this was your School Facilities Committee following the lead of the School Facilities Commission regarding that particular school over in Sweetwater County. Why spend component money when the assessment rose to the level that it did? We had the two lists, so our Facilities Committee requested that this be transferred over. Let's get started on that building over there. We know we're going to need a high school one of these days soon. That was the process. It's been done in the past. It was done on this one. But truthfully, it really doesn't matter which way we go on this one now, so.
Further discussion. Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, I would suggest you vote aye on this and honor the process, because here's the effect of doing this. And my colleague's correct. The select committee decided to do this. This was not a recommendation. But the effect of that recommendation says we're going to take that, which was component funding, and now we're going to use it to start design of a new high school. So that puts that new high school at the front of the line without completing a Mercer study on all of the potential alternatives to just building another high school. But the effect of that is now that would shift it in front of Natrona number 1, Mountain View, Campbell number 1, Wagon Wheel, Niobrara number 1, Lance Creek, Sheridan number 2, Junior High School, Niobrara number 1, Elementary Middle School, Crook number 1, Moorcroft High School, Carbon, Rollins, K through 1, Converse 1, Campbell 1, Laramie 1, Albany 1, Campbell 1, Goshen 1, Campbell 1, Hot Springs, Cook. You get the picture, Mr. President, you get the picture. We've already decided, without going through a complete Mercer study, as if this was the absolute best remedy for the state, financial remedy for the state and the district. And it put this project ahead of all of those others out there. And this is why we should maintain fidelity to the process and not the political process that you get out of the select committee. So on and for this amendment.
Senator Landon, for your second time. Sorry.
Mr. President, that's slightly out of bounds, I would think. Mr. President, 5 years ago, we did a Mercer study in that school district. We worked diligently on a satellite facility, knowing that soon we were coming with this very issue. Design is never implemented until the proper work is done in advance of that. There is nothing nefarious about the way this budget is presented today. We've been doing it for years. The school facilities group does its job, Mr. President. We do it on your behalf, and it is not an easy job. It's like having the job of selecting the final 64 in the NCAA basketball tournament. Somebody's going to get left out, and somebody's going to get a higher ranking than most of us believe they should. But there is a good process in place, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Jones.
Mr. President, since we did talk about the satellite school in Sweetwater County 1, this satellite school was built, it's too small. We have 2 academies in our high school, and in order to make that facility work, our kids can only go half a day. They also are traveling from the main building across town, some of them on the interstate, to get to the rest of their classes. This is an issue, and just doing the maintenance is not going to keep our kids off of the road twice a day. We have an issue in Sweetwater County of expansive soils, and we have a lot of sandstone. This building is failing. Our original building is failing. So we might not be at the top of the list, but just doing this maintenance is just a Band-Aid. So if you think you should spend this money, then go right ahead and do it. But we're gonna be back here again, trying to keep our kids off the school, off the roads, and in one facility.
Further discussion? Question being called. We're voting on Division 2 to third reading amendment number 35 of Senate File 1. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Division number 2. Anderson? No. Baldwin? Baldwin, no. Barlow? No. Beitman? Aye. Boner? No. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? No. French? Aye. Furphy? No. Guru?
No.
No. Hicks?
Aye.
Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide?
Aye.
Aye. Jones? No. Kinsky?
Aye.
Aye. Kolb?
Aye.
Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen?
Aye.
Aye. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? No. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
No.
No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Division 2, 16 aye, 15 no.
By your vote, Division 2 to third reading amendment 35 of Senate File 1 has passed the Senate. Third reading amendment number 65 to Senate File 1. Oh, we had Division 3, excuse me. I blew that. We had a Division 3, so discussion on Division 3 on third reading amendment 35 to Senate File 1. Senator Rothfuss, you have the floor.
Clarify again, Mr. President, could we just have clarify again for what Division 3 is?
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, Division 3 is lines 23 through 29, 23 through 29, and you'll find that in your budget, the bottom of page 131. It is the Romanet 9 paragraph that then goes on to 132. Mr. President, I don't know why this would be part of this amendment. I got the spirit of the amendment, but what is being addressed here really has nothing to do with that. This is an ongoing many-year problem. The good chairman of the Select Committee raised it. It's about a former school of the deaf and some complicated ownership of property at a school in Natrona County. And this is an attempted resolution of that ownership. It's a portion that's owned by the state that has moved through ownership of the state a couple of different times, but is not contiguously owned by school facilities or the school district at this point, even though it underlies a portion of a school. So complicated and causes some ownership challenges. This was brought to the School Facilities Committee over a number of years, trying to figure out how do we resolve it just so that it's a uniform ownership. And what this does is basically allow it to be purchased using school facility dollars from the state, by the state, take money out of one pocket, put it into the other, and then the second half of the budget amendment says, now put it back into the first pocket. It sounds ridiculous. It shouldn't have to happen that way. It is kind of ridiculous. But that was the best we came up with so that there would be unified ownership, again, still by the state, of this property at the end of the game. There's no net expense, no net liability, because whatever we pay for it comes back to the state into the same account that it started in at the end of the game. It's more record keeping than a real appropriation, but the only way, Mr. President, we could figure out how to do it was buy it from ourselves. That's what this does. So I'd urge the body to vote against Division number 3 so that we can finally resolve this odd little circumstance under a school in Natrona County.
Further discussion. Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, an explanation of why this is in there is because there was a memo last year that I received from our LSO staff attorneys that this provision would probably, because it's state-owned property, would have to go to a public auction. That's what state property under our Constitution says. You can't subvert that. It needs to be sold through an auction. That's why I pulled this out of there. I don't think this meets our constitutional requirements of just setting a price on it and moving money from one pocket to another. But that's just what the memo said, that we may want to move cautiously on this particular issue of not following the constitutional provisions of the sale of state property.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know that before we do our budget bill, of course, we meet with our LSO staff and walks us through any kind of legal concerns, and I don't recall this one being brought up, so I'd love to see that memo if you could share it with the body.
Thank you. Further discussion? Senator Barlow?
Thank you, Mr. President. At some risk, I just want to know if there was a Mercer study done on this. But more seriously, on the constitutional issue, if a school district is subdivision of the state of Wyoming, it seems to me that there may be some latitude in this sale, public auction type thing. Also, it doesn't make sense to have a divided property that we would offer to the public, and then the public has a divided interest in a property. So I would, as tempting, as good as this has gone, I think I'll vote aye on this, because it seems like we want to have a Mercer study so we can actually address this. Thank you.
Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, and that may be accurate, but the question I have, and I don't know, maybe one of the other members of the Select Committee on School Facilities, did we get an appraisal on this facility to make determination of what it was actually worth?
Senator Rothfuss, come up here. I am going to talk.
President Driscoll, on the 3rd Division.
Thank you. I'm just real quick. We clearly, under the Constitution, can trade property between state properties. We just got done doing it with a facility down there for the military, with the U.S. government. Routinely, up where I live, good senator from Campbell County, they donate fire trucks and sell fire trucks to our district all the time. Nobody ever challenges whether one government entity to another one. It's Constitution. They don't have to sell it as long as it goes from one entity to another. They can't give me a fire truck, and they can't give a patrol car to me, but they certainly can to another county to the south of me or to my county, which happens routinely. And I think we've done this often. State property gets transferred real often to fire districts, to other municipal uses or public uses, and often we do it without appraisals. It just adds expense to what we do. As long as they all agree it's fair, we do it. I hate to see us get into appraising properties, transfer amongst us when there's no right pocket, left pocket. All we've done is cause the cost to government. But I'd encourage this one to go ahead and let it go ahead and happen. Let's get a piece cleaned up of it anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Further discussion, Senator Landon.
Just as a point of interest, Mr. Chairman, the Select Committee toured this facility, spent quite a bit of time with facilities folks from that district. When this request went up through the ranks, and then subsequently we informed the Appropriations Committee of this issue, it was fully vetted by the legal folks in our state government. So thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Question being called. We're voting on Division 3 of 3rd reading amendment number 35 to Senate File 1.
Third reading amendment number 35, Division 3. Anderson? No. No. Baldwin? No. Barlow? No. Beitman? No. Boner? No. Bouchard? No. Brennan? No. Case? No. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? No. Ellis? No. French? No. Furphy? No. Garou? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? No. Kinski? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? No. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Steinmetz? No. President Driscoll?
No.
No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Division 3, 3 aye, 28 no.
By your vote, Division 3 to third reading amendment number 35 of Senate File 1 has failed. Third reading amendment number 35, as divided, has passed Senate. We are on third reading amendment number 65 to Senate File 1. We'll have an amendment read in, please.
Senate File 1, third reading amendment number 65, section 313, delete.
Senator Kolb.
Oh, Mr. President, I move, should I say, I would ask for withdrawing third reading amendment number 65 to Senate File 1.
Without objection, third reading amendment number 65, Senate File 1 is withdrawn. We are now on third reading amendment number 36 to Senate File 1. Reading clerk will please read it in.
Senate File 1, third reading amendment number 36, section 314, page 132, line 23, delete.
Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, I move third reading amendment number 37 to Senate File number 1 and ask for your favorable consideration. So, 37. Mr. President, I'll restate that. Mr. President, I move third reading amendment number 37 to Senate
36
File.
we're on. 36. Mineral severance tax division.
All right. I'm just anxious to get done today.
You have 3 in a row. We can get them over fast if you'd like. I'll let you make a group motion. Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, I move third reading amendment number 36 to Senate File number 1. This deals with your mineral tax distributions, and because it's only effective for the budget year, this would be for 2 years. And members, this is something that some of us has worked on for a long time, is trying to simplify the budget. The only thing this does is when we have with the mineral severance taxes, we have $155 million, which we call under the cap. Anything between $155 million and $450 million is over the cap. And Mr. President, then we have another tip on the mineral severance taxes after that. So we have 2 tips.
Speak pretty close.
Yeah, so
They're not
Mr.
here.
President, so we have the 155 million that's under the cap, and then between that and the 359 million is between the cap, has a distribution formula. And then after that, there's another distribution formula. All this does is say, we're gonna take it back, we're gonna go back to what the first is between 155, and anything after that is under the same distribution formula. It's just trying to simplify the process.
Further discussion? Seeing none. We're voting on third reading amendment number 36 to Senate File 1. Clerk will call the roll. What? There is no money in it? Ayes, noes been called now. Who's talking? Oh, Senator Nethercott, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing you very well. Start jumping up and down.
Okay.
I got you.
Thanks,
Senator
Mr. President.
Nethercott.
Mr. President, thanks. I just have a question about the ability to budget beyond the 2-year biennium budget. Is that constitutional? Can we bind future legislators and legislatures in that way? And just a little bit more discussion, recognizing that we go into legislating into fiscal year 2029, when I look at page 1, line 21. And so I know there was a lot of caution given to us that anything we did in this budget bill really was limited to the biennium, of which we are asked to present a budget for. So just further discussion about that.
I'm going to allow some latitude on this, or we're going to end up in rules. Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, that's existing language as is today. Doesn't change anything, that's existing language.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. President. it looks like we're going in on line 14 for years 27 and 28. And I'm just curious if there was any conversation, even if it is existing language, if that's something that we can do or should be doing in the biennium budget. Is this legislating in the budget? We're touching statutes. I'm actually really quite curious about that.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, yeah, that language has been used in that way for quite a few years and has gone back and forth and been the subject of much consternation and fighting. There is nothing in the budget that is binding beyond the budget. So all of that language is honestly superfluous. But it's in there, I guess, to feel good about and maybe tip a direction of what the intent is in the future. But unless you passed it in the future budget, it would have no meaning. I think the only reason that the 27 is called out in 14 is because lines 18 and 19 are a specific carve out, and that was the easiest way to conform the language. I don't think it does anything else. But the good senator from here in Laramie County is absolutely right. Anything beyond the 2026 is functionally meaningless, and you could write anything you wanted in the budget and it would do nothing. It would continue to do nothing because the budget has no legal force after the budget expires. The next budget becomes dominant.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. President.
Oh, excuse me, you're still on. Go ahead.
That's all right.
Further discussion? Question being called.
Third reading amendment number 36, roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? No. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Kolb? Aye. Landon? No. Larson? Aye. McCune? Aye. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Amendment 3036, 25 aye, 6 no.
By your vote, third reading amendment number 36, Senate File 1 is passed the Senate. Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate stand in recess until 2 p.m.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Announcements. Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Transportation Committee will meet tomorrow, February 23rd, upon noon recess in Capitol Center Room W2 online to consider House Bill 8, Commercial Driver License, Hazardous Material Endorsement, and House Bill 23, Vehicle Registration, E-Certificate, and Grace Period.
Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee Number 9, Minerals, will be meeting Friday, February 23rd, upon the noon recess, room number 4 downstairs, to hear the 2 bills coming from the House, right out of the gate, House Bill 32, Geological Sequestration, Utilization Amendments, and House Bill 33, Mining Operations, Blasting Requirements. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Landon.
Mr. President, your Judiciary Committee 1 will meet in W4 downstairs at 8:30 in the morning to consider House Bill 26, Emergency Protective Services Effective Period, House Bill 27, DFS and Law Enforcement Cross-Reporting.
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee Number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services will meet tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., room 6, and online to hear 3 bills. House Bill 14, Prior Authorization Regulations, House Bill 15, Health Insurance Reimbursements of Overpayments, and House Bill 25, Medicaid Third-Party Payer Conditions.
Senator Kinski.
Mr. Chairman, your Appropriations Committee Number 2 will meet tomorrow, Friday, February 23rd at 8 a.m. in room 301 to hear House Bill 70, local government distributions, House Bill 71, broadband development, House Bill 72, workers' compensation provision for adverse deviation, House Bill 73, abandoned mine reclamation accounts, and other bills as received and referred. We will then continue at noon if we don't get all those done in the morning.
Thank you. Senate stands adjourned until, what time did he tell me? Recess till 2.